This video is color graded using math. Math's so simple, we can do the whole thing in Excel. Let me explain. So first we need to understand color, or more accurately, we need to know how screens, video, and the digital world understand color. I'm going to assume you know images are made of pixels, and each pixel is made of a red, green, and blue subpixel, and the brightness of each of those subpixels combines together to make any color. If you didn't, now you do. And because each pixel is just a numerical set, we can do math to those values, changing the color of the pixel and the overall image. Let's take this pixel right here. Its value is 190.132.116, combining together to create this fleshy pink. We can times each of those values by 1.3 and get 247.171.151, making the pixel the same color, just brighter. And congrats, we've just discovered the concept of gain. Which makes complete sense. I've never really thought about the math behind the tools that I use. If gain is so simple, what about all the others? And does that mean we could write out all this math in Excel and build a clone of Resolve? So, first was to work out how to get this image into Excel, not just as a JPEG, but as individually colored cells we could modify. Matt wrote a tool in Nuke that created a list of the RGB values of each pixel, but it was slow, like 3 hours a frame slow. So we grabbed some help and rewrote it in Python to give us an enormous list of values we could work with. We brought those into Excel, and when arranged in their cells, you can almost kind of see an image. But we need color from those numbers, so we adjusted some code from Stack Overflow posted by Tim Williams, turning our 3 values on one sheet into a colored cell on the other, and then doing that again and again and again 22,399 times. Now we have a sheet of RGB values we can modify, and the resulting image created from those. And with a whole bunch of fancy pie charts, we have the most unstable Excel workbook in existence. But it works. So we've built our gain control already. Increase the gain, increase the bright across the whole image by the same %. And to do that, we're just multiplying the values. But what about the other controls? The best way to understand all these transforms is using a graph, where our x-axis is our input value, and then the y-axis is the resulting output. While gain changes the slope of the graph around 0, 0, we also have lift, which changes the pivot of the graph around 1, 1. This means gain makes a value bigger the closer to 1 it is, and lift makes a value bigger the closer to 0 it is. Contrast works in a similar way, taking our graph and multiplying it based on a pivot, making our brights brighter and our darks darker. And we can adjust where this pivot or crossover point is by changing the pivot value. All of those are multiplication, but what about addition? For that we have offset, which shifts the whole image up or down, but keeps the same slope. We can also get a bit more advanced with gamma, where we add a curve to the middle of our graph, meaning we can shift our midtones without adjusting the upper and lower ends too much. We can even take the graphs of our R, G, and B channels and shift them with gain to adjust the white balance. This is how we change color temperature. And we're doing all these adjustments by applying an equation to our red, green, and blue values. But unfortunately, this is kind of the limit of what we can do in Excel. 1, because the workbook is wildly unstable, and 2, because color doesn't just exist in this RGB space. We can also do a whole other world of transforms by expressing or visualizing the color differently, using something you've probably heard of: hue, saturation, and luminance. Imagine a cube. This is how we visualize RGB, with each of the colors sitting on an axis each. When it comes to HSL, it's easier to understand as a cylinder. Luminance is our up-down, how bright a color is. Saturation is our in and out, how colorful the color is. And our final axis is more of a circle, which hue or part of the rainbow our color is. And this other model opens up a whole bunch of new possibilities for grading, where we can adjust in a way that wouldn't be possible with just our RGB tools. Where RGB has a red, green, and blue channel we can modify, HSL has a hue, saturation, and luminance channel we can adjust. The thing to remember is that these channels are still just a collection of numbers that can be modified with math. If we take hue as a spread from 1 to 360 degrees, we can take groups of numbers and shift them up, down, or somewhere else entirely, changing the color of objects in our shot. We can also use curves in this HSL space to pull color numbers towards another color, resulting in something a bit more subtle. With this, we can create shots that feature complementary color palettes and change the mood or feeling of a scene, like that classic teal and orange. And of course, we're not limited to modifying just that one channel. We can also reduce or increase the saturation and luminance channels, or even use one channel as a qualifier for the other, meaning we can change the saturation of pixels if they're a particular hue. But there's also this third space of adjustment, transforms that are spatial. Or to explain better, transformations that aren't on a pixel by pixel basis, but rather use the information from the pixels around them. The most common, and the one I hadn't really thought about, are the shadows and the highlight sliders. Resolve is essentially pulling a luma key of the shadow region, blurring the mask, which takes into consideration all the neighbouring pixels, and then allows you to gently adjust the gain. This way you can lift the shadows without removing all contrast and muddying the image. We can build a similar tool ourselves with nodes, but it's much more convenient to just use it how it was built. The thing is, Resolve is a bit of a magic box, and we can't see exactly what it's doing, only that it's doing a pretty great job of these spatial adjustments. Okay, but all of these sliders exist in pretty much every editor. Why does Resolve feel so much better? Two factors. One, Resolve has great color management and the ability to work in linear color spaces, like ACES. When working in Rec. 709, we have a non-linear gamma curve that's already applied to our footage, which maximizes the perceivable range. Watch our video on log vs raw if you have no idea what I'm talking about. When we grade in this space, we're stacking curves on existing curves, making our tools work less accurately than if we were operating in linear. But number two, the developers of Resolve have spent a lot of time and care making these tools feel great. While they operate on the basic math that we used, there are other processes going on in the background that make them feel smarter and more nuanced. This all combines with masks, tracking, and a whole suite of other tools that make Resolve exceptionally powerful. Much more powerful than we could ever build in Excel. But now we have a better understanding of how it all works. Download our Excel spreadsheet or a Resolve project file that shows you exactly what each of the controls are doing on the Syrp Lab blog. You can find the link in the description below or head to syrplab.com/education.
You're gonna pick it up.